welcome to Thrive While Living an Addict. I'm KL Wells, your host. I'm super excited today to have Richard Lynch. He comes from Kentucky and he has his own story, multiple layers of his story, which I want him to speak to in just a minute. And then he also works within the correctional institutions. And we haven't had enough voices from that segment of what we deal with when we love someone who happens to be in jail or in prison. And it can be quite a shocking, surreal experience. And so I want you to also touch on that. So Richard, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And so why don't you start with kind of your origin story?
All right. It all began back in 1980. So my parents were babies having babies. They were very young, 15 and 17, 18. And my dad was kind of the quintessential cool guy in high school, getting in fist fights, playing football, that kind of stuff. Got pregnant. And then a few years into that, I think what my mother, what she would probably say she learned is that he's not stepping up to the plate. Why not? He's still wanting to be that cool guy. Well, my dad was an alcoholic. And when you're a small child, you really don't know anything's different about your household until you go to other people's households or until you get to school. And then you start seeing like, how come my dad never picks me up from school? How come it's always my mom? Or like, why do your parents look so much older than mine? They look like my grandparents look because my grandparents were in their 40s. So these are things that you just start to come online and aware to at a certain age when you're seeing other households. And for a while, I don't know, I think maybe I was just oblivious to some of it, like most kids, until probably 4 to 5 years old. And so in hindsight, it was early that I recognized there were some issues, but to me, it doesn't feel early. It's when you are raised in trauma and chaos, that's what you know. That's what you are comfortable in. So I have to remind myself sometimes, and I'll get to it, but my younger kids, they've not had that life. So no wonder they don't know about these things. That's actually a good thing. I don't want them to be that grown yet. So my dad, pre-cell phones, if he went on a bender, you didn't know where he was for weeks at a time sometimes. So it was just, that was the life before the internet and cell phones and things like that, friends covering for you. You check the local bars that you're familiar with, and that was that. So my mom really had to kind of hold the fort down. And for me, what that translated to was being parentified at a very young age and having to step up and help with my sister, taking on adult. Even the emotional responsibility for some of what was going on was kind of projected onto me. And for my mother, she was almost a single mom and went back and finished school because she got pregnant in high school. So she didn't get to finish high school. She had to go to a school for pregnant teens and finish that. And then she went to community college and had to hold down the house while doing that. So it's not a matter of like throwing rocks at my mom and saying like, look where you failed. It's more of these are the realities that some people have. Like you can't be in two places at the same time. So if you have to work all the time, go to school, do all these things, but I also need you. Now we have neglect. It might not be intentional and it might just be circumstantial, but there's still a void there. So I'd love to say that like alcoholism was the worst part of the story, but when my father started to get sober or tried to get sober for the first time, he had a psychotic break. And it kind of became clear that he had been self-medicating all these years. My father was a paranoid schizophrenic and bipolar. And I think today that he probably would be diagnosed schizoaffective, which is a combination of the thought and the mood disorder. But that was his diagnosis. And from the moment that happened, things changed dramatically in our household. Violence became an issue, fear. He was psychotic. He was not himself. And
for sure.
It was a suicide that triggered that for him. His uncle, who he was very close to, committed suicide. And I just want to clarify, and I teach QPR, which is a suicide prevention method. Some people would argue that saying committed is an offensive word because it almost has a negative connotation. So some people say completed. So I mean no offense. And I've been through this in my life, as you'll find out. But sometimes the language we use is triggering. But his uncle completed suicide by asphyxiating himself. He tied a garden hose to his muffler and duct taped it and went off to a secluded area and took his life. My father was getting sober, and that just caused that break. And what triggered it was he was at his best friend's house, his
Mm.
drinking buddy, and saw duct tape on the coffee table and started to
Oh.
connect dots that were not there. He's like, you killed my uncle. You did this. And it was just bizarre behavior that culminated in hospitalization. And it was just, that was my life after that. For all of my childhood and adolescence was him in and out of those facilities, either due to alcoholism and relapsing or to psychiatric breaks. Unfortunately for my dad, the medications that worked for him were older, so they had more stout side effects. He was unable to keep and hold. He could work. My dad had skills, but it's kind of hard to keep a job when you start to have a psychotic break and say things that are scary to other people and things like that. So he ended up on disability, which was an issue for him because as a man, we're taught to provide. So now he's struggling with the whole identity issue of like, I'm not a husband or a father, I'm not providing.
Yeah.
And he was also on again, off again drinking, and he didn't like his medicine, so he'd stop taking it and lie about it. And then I was usually the one that knew. I could talk about it now, but his voice changed. The pitch of his voice was different, and I always knew that 3 to 5 days from now, my life's going to be an unpredictable hell. It might result in him killing me, hurting my mom or my sister, but it's coming. You know, hey, mom, he's not taking his meds. Well, he says he is. I don't care what he's telling you, he's not. And as a kid, I didn't have that language. I didn't, so it felt like pushback, like, you're not listening to me. Why am I the one noticing this? Not, that doesn't mean she didn't notice, but she has her side of the story of what it was like raising kids. So all of this gets so complicated into one big ball of wax when we're talking about mental health and substances. Because at the core of this, and I said it before we started, I've never met anyone that turned in a book report in 5th grade that said, I want to be an alcoholic when I grow up. I'd like to be an IV heroin user. Something happened. Something happened for this trajectory to begin. And we'll get to what I believe is maybe what those things are. But it's not just simply a choice that this is fun and I like doing it. For me, my saving grace was my education. I was smart and I got a lot of my attention and positive accolades at school. The problem with that is kids don't like a know-it-all. So it was like I didn't really have that great home life, and I didn't really fit in at school. I went to a Catholic school. We were very poor in a middle-class neighborhood. So just it was not good on a lot of levels. But I also kind of knew that was my ticket out, was to get an education. And my mom worked really hard to make sure we were able to go to that private school. I had to work cake booths with her and sleep halls for tuition money. Like, she made it happen. And I think maybe, subconsciously, or maybe it was a conscious decision that she knew that might be the only hope, like that, maybe the faith or maybe the education, maybe the both of them. But for me, even when I became a teenager and was starting to really struggle with accepting my father, because by the time I was 14, I didn't want anything to do with it.
Sure.
I'm tired of you breaking your promise. I'm tired of you telling me you're going to stay sober, you're going to take your medicine, and then you don't. To me, it feels like you're doing that to me on purpose or because of me. And at that age, the violence also escalated to a point where he choked me unconscious because I went to fight another kid who probably flirted with my little girlfriend or something at the time. And you can't do that. And the kid pulled a gun on me. And when I got home, my father was waiting for me. And I was in trouble. And he was lecturing me, and he took me in his truck over to that kid's house and made me apologize. And that kid and his dad chastised me for 25 minutes about what they'd like to do to me and all these things. And I'm like, he pulled a gun on me. I don't care. You did this. So to me, it was just more the same of like, I shouldn't have went to go fight this kid. But at the same time, like, it's just 14-year-old behavior.
Sure.
That he should be very familiar with. So to me, I'm like, you've never been my dad, and you want to try to be my dad all of a sudden and tell me what's right and wrong, and then just humiliated me, and you didn't defend me. You didn't support me. And when we got home, I told him as much. And I told him, I was like, I don't love you. You're not my dad. You don't get to play dad when you're feeling like it or when you're sober for a little bit. And he snapped, choked me. I ran away. And the culmination of that was my mother putting me in therapy. Almost like punishment, though. If you're out of control and if you don't get it together, I'm going to have to turn you over to the state. And I'm like, wow, you keep choosing him. You keep choosing this man that's hurting us. That's how it felt to me.
Sure.
In hindsight, what a saving grace sending me to therapy was. For many years, it was like this guy that walked with me, this therapist I had. I look back, and now that I am a therapist, it's like he couldn't fix what's wrong in my life.
Right.
He wasn't trying to fix it. When I was younger, I'm like, is this even like my life is still chaotic and crazy and not okay? But he jumped in the deep end with me. He jumped in the deep end and treaded water with me and helped me survive it.
Right.
I didn't see it that way in real time. Although I do remember feeling like, man, this is a part of my support system. This guy's for me. He's my guy. Like I can go talk to him about anything. He treated me like an adult, where the rest of the world was like, oh, you're just a kid. You don't know what you're talking about. But it really sparked my interest in human behavior. All I've ever wanted to be was a writer. And maybe still do, but the thought became like, you can't just be a writer. You have to pay bills. So I studied teaching and thought that's what I was going to do. I started college before I was done with high school. I moved out at a very young age. Officially, I was like 16, getting an apartment, and like I just knew my education was the ticket. That's what I did. By the time I started college, I already had college going. And then I started doing student teaching, and they sent me to a really awful middle school here in town, and they broke me. These kids broke me. I was like, I can't teach. And I changed that path and added a second degree in psychology. And instead of teaching, I studied English. And when I finished that, I moved into clinical psychology in graduate school and so on. But when I was 20, I had a kid on the way all of a sudden. Now everything I think I know about life is up for debate. I don't know how to be a dad. And I just know I don't want to be like my dad.
Right.
But the reality was my dad had done a lot better for a couple of years. I just wouldn't let him in. You can't hurt me if I don't fall for that again, so to speak. So when I went to their house to tell them they were going to be grandparents, my mother started lecturing me about all the things I needed to do to step up to the plate. And my dad just smiled. He sat there, quote unquote, with a shitty grin. And I just, when I left there, I was like, what was that? It opened up something in my heart, because what I was witnessing was joy out of a man that was really troubled and had a lot of problems, and finding out he was going to be a grandpa just moved something in him that moved something in me. And he became my best friend.
Oh, wow.
We never went backwards and talked about the things. We moved forward, and we did everything together. U of L sports, the in-state rivalry here is U of L and UK. So we're Team U of L. So if they had a paper airplane team, we'd watch it. We'd buy tickets to that, and we'd spend all our phone calls talking about that. We'd change our shirts at halftime to influence the impact of the game. You wore the unlucky hat. Like, this was our lives. And I grew up in a family of deer hunters, and that was a huge part of our, not just as a pastime, but just a part of our lives.
Sure.
So we did everything together. And he was a great grandfather. Like, he picked him up from daycare. He loved that. He had a little Pomeranian dog and a grandson, and they went to Dairy Queen every day. And the dog got one of them whatever they're called. They get a treat at the drive-through, and he gets something for the grandbaby. And it was just, man.
That's sweet.
And in 2006, I married her. And I learned a valuable lesson that you don't marry someone because you have a kid on the way. That's the wrong reason to get married. But in my eyes, I was like, my kid won't have the dad I had. This is what I have to do. Got us a bigger home. Like, I started focusing on those things, and that's good. They needed to happen, but the relationship was not really there. And then we had another child, another son, who was born 3 months premature. He weighed 1 pound, 10 ounces. It was the most terrifying thing ever. He's perfectly healthy. He's 21 years old now, but like, it was terrifying and a big strain on us.
Yeah.
And also, I think we just wanted different things out of life. My focus was in this psychology career. At this point, I am working in corrections. I am the director of a correctional facility. Like I've worked in 2 state prisons and psych and psychological assessments. And then in the women's prison, I also did therapy. But then I realized like that's not really my niche because we're not really helping people in prison that way. I'm doing all this testing just to figure out if they can go to general population, not to make treatment recommendations that are going to be followed. So it's like, why did I do this testing for 3 days or 2 days? So I got into community corrections, which is more reentry and trying to help them transition back. Worked my way up. When 2006, in February, the decision was made that we were getting divorced. It was brutal. It was an ugly divorce. I think I carry some trauma from it, to be honest. And I went overnight from being a dad that gave his kids a bath every night and fed them dinner to seeing them every other weekend and being at the mercy of whatever she says, whatever the court says. And it was just an awful transition. I paid enough child support that I couldn't afford to live on my own. I had to move back into my parents' home. And my education came to an end. It was like my whole identity was upside down, all in a matter of 5-6 months. And then November of 2006, November 12th, my father made the decision to end his life while we were hunting. He shot and killed himself, and it fundamentally changed my life forever. The person that existed on November 11th is gone. They do not exist. And I wasted a large portion of my life trying to get back to that version of myself. Before I could realize that's not how this works. It was traumatic, to say the least. It was devastating. That was my best friend.
Why and you were with him hunting?
So I don't get into the mechanics of all that.
Sure.
Just because it's not simply my story. It's my mother's story, my sister's story. But we were on a hunting trip together. And I will say this. We hunted the day before. It triggered him to start spiraling. He didn't want to go. I told her he was unwell. He showed up anyways, and I had decided I was going to go with my uncle, and he showed up very unwell, and things transpired from there. But it altered the course of my life. I couldn't function. I couldn't sleep. I would see things. I was having flashbacks. I was triggered by things. I thought I would see his truck everywhere or hear his voice. Like I couldn't function. I tell this just to be true to my story, but like the next day we had to immediately start planning a funeral. And at the funeral home, and my mom asking me like, what do you think of this? What do you think of these arrangements? And it was like, I don't care. I don't know. I just had tears coming down my face.
Sure.
Not because I was crying either, but because I couldn't regulate or control anything. And I remember her telling me, you're going to have to go to your doctor and talk to him about some medicine because I can't worry about you and carry all this. Okay. But what I heard was I'm a burden.
Yeah.
What I heard is your vulnerability is not safe and welcome here. You need to deal with that. You need to stop this.
Right.
I didn't take it that way in that moment, but in my healing journey, that's what I'm very aware of.
Yeah.
I'd started to date someone, and she snapped on me one day and slammed her hand down and was like, oh my God, would you stop crying already? Everyone loses their parents. You have to get over this.
Ooh.
And I will tell you what I did is I stopped crying, and I stopped crying for 12 years. I can tell you that concretely that I didn't cry again for 12 years. I couldn't, because what fundamentally got communicated to me is none of this is safe. Nobody's safe enough. I locked it in. The problem is that's the falsehood that a lot of men are raised with, that real men don't cry.
Right.
From the time we're this big, we tell our boys, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about.
Right.
We mock them and call them a sissy. We tell them things like, you better rub some dirt on it and keep going. So we grow up not feeling safe enough to express our emotions, even though we're designed to have the emotions. And then we end up 40, 50 years old and we're all jacked up and we're on our third wives and they're like, why do you the way you are? And it's like, I don't know. I've never been allowed to process what is wrong with me. And that's an oversimplification of men by a long shot.
For sure.
But in the work that I do, oh my goodness, let me tell you how I see that play out. They have not ever been allowed to wrestle with their feelings and emotions. So,
well, Richard, even in the work that I do at this point, because I'm, an executive coach and business consultant, I use the feelings quad that Mark Brackett did. Like it happens every week. I love the circle, the feelings
Yes.
that you have. I have an exec that has that in a pillow.
Yeah.
So
It's a
it
huge part
is.
of what I focus on here.
Mm-hmm.
What are you aware of? And I didn't invent that ministry. I'm a part of. It's a big part of and I learned it there in 2018 when I found this ministry and started a deeper healing journey in my life. It was the first time I experienced safe men. That gave me a place to unpack those things.
Right.
And right away, that's one of the things is like, what are you aware of? And it was the first time anyone invited me into my own vulnerability to go, hey, whatever it is, it's okay, but let's talk about it. And it was so counterintuitive to everything else. So bless you for inviting men and women into
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's the secret sauce.
Yeah. Well, we're human.
We are designed to have these emotions.
Yeah. Hello, So make sure I'm clear about this. In that moment that just was who you were before and who you were after, if I remember correctly, you stepped into your own addiction.
Yeah. So
as a way to medicate your pain.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So I actually was going into, my goal was to become a police officer in 2000. And then I shifted to corrections because I injured my back. I herniated 2 discs, and immediately at 20 years old, the solution was put him on 30 milligrams of hydrocodone every day, right out the gate. And for 5 or 6 years, I took it as prescribed, never thought anything of it. And after his death, the first U of L UK football game that happened, I was with my uncle, my best friend, and it's like, all right, I should have fun. I was painfully aware that he was not there, and he should have been. And I had a bag with me with clothes. I was staying the night, so I had my medicine, and I just walked in the other room, opened up the bag, and took an extra one. It was that simple. And I'm gonna tell you what happened. I felt something. I felt good for a minute. Pain medication doesn't cure the pain. It makes you feel so good you don't think about the pain. So it was like, oh my goodness, I found it. I found the answer to deal with because I had not felt good for a long time. My whole life being destroyed. I was hurting. And the reality is, what I know now is that I had a hole in my heart the shape of my father. No pain pill was going to fill that. No alcohol was going to fill that. No woman, no nothing. I poured myself into my career. I became a workaholic. I became a serial dater, chasing women, and then the pain medicine. And I'm very high functioning because I grew up in chaos.
Yeah.
So no one knew for a long time. But my story is the same as everyone else's. It began with that extra pill, and it was never going to be enough. None of them, all of them in the world was never going to be enough. It went from 1 prescription to 2 prescriptions to kicked out of their care to someone told me about a doctor that'll give you anything you want. And then that wasn't enough, and buying them on the street. And then one day I was sick. I couldn't find anything, and someone introduced me to Oxycontin. And I just say it was synthetic heroin. I don't care what anyone says. It should have never been on the streets. The only people that should ever been prescribed that were terminally ill people, because it was lab grade heroin. I knew from the first time I did it, oh no, something is very different now. I have a problem now.
Right.
But even that awareness was not enough to stop the train wreck, because again, no one is seeking out to screw up. No one's seeking out to make a wreck of their life. The drugs and the alcohol are a symptom of something else. They're not the problem. They just become the problem. And that's really my approach to treatment at this point, because of that lived experience. Like, I didn't really understand it with my dad. It's, oh, he's self-medicating. What does that even mean? Then I live it, and it's like, oh, I'm doing the same thing. And now I know it, but I can't get off this ride. The sickness was horrific. And what happened is I started to misuse company credit cards and got pulled over with a bunch of pills on me. And just in a matter of 90 days, I think I was charged with 5 felonies. And I destroyed that career. Obviously, you can't steal from your employer. And now I'm getting these other criminal charges. And because of that, my ex-wife was able to go to the court and say, hey, he's scary. They stopped me from being able to see my children. And for 22 months, I fought that. I refused to say I was guilty of a couple things that I did not do that. I didn't do that. But the way that the laws are written, if you have X number of pills, it's automatically trafficking. And I'm like, I'm a drug addict. I told the officer on the side of the road, I'll eat every one of them and not overdose. You know it. I know it. Why are you charging me with selling drugs? You know I'm not selling drugs. You followed me from the person that sold them to me, but they wanted me to tell. And it was like, whoa, what is happening? Now I'm sitting in a jail cell. Oh my goodness. And it culminates after fighting it for all that time. I accepted a deal. But you got to understand that my intelligence has gotten me through life. So I've got it all figured out. I've played every angle, every scenario. With my jail credit, I'm eligible for parole. So even if they don't give me probation, I'm in good shape. And I signed the deal. I come back 6 weeks later and there was 0 jail credit, which was not the arrangement. And it was like, whoa, 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 hold on. Oh. And my lawyer's like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm like, I'm very worried about it. This is my life. How did you let this happen? And then she's like, you're getting probation. And I'm like, they're going to make an example out of me today. And that's what happened. That judge remanded me to the Department of Corrections in the state of Kentucky. And I tell you, there's nothing more surreal than that walk out of a courtroom through a side door and down through a maze of tunnels and hallways and security checkpoints to go to jail. That is just very surreal and humbling. And that entire process is a story on its own. But I think we want to breeze past a lot of that just because I could get bogged down there of like, what was it like to survive that? Because that in itself was a lifetime. But what I'll tell you, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Because even though I was 22 months sober, I was just dry sober. I wasn't working on myself. I wasn't healing. I wasn't getting better. I just was abstaining. I was very resistant. I was blaming everyone for all these problems. It was my dad's fault, my mom's fault, my ex-wife's fault, my girlfriend's fault, the cop's fault, the judge's fault, my lawyer's fault. Not me, not me. But that whole process, I went from having the keys to the jail to living there. And it is not a safe place. It is not a good place. It is in itself a whole thing. But for me, what did happen, there was no programming. I've been on medicines since I was 18 years old. I didn't get one of those medications. No one took care of me. I have a significant food allergy. I was told, don't eat. That was literal words I was told by the people that work there and care for you, which is just horrendous. But I did put myself. And being stripped of all illusions of control, I can tell you that is how I came to faith. It is how faith is such a deep part of my life still, and how I've maintained sobriety for coming up on 16 years this November. Or I'm sorry, September 7th. It'll be 16 years. But what happened is that a couple pastors coming into a jail and a prison, volunteering their time, just transformed my life. But it involved my mother ministering to me over the phone that I needed to pray and arguing with her. I don't want to pray. I don't know how. And then going to church. And this guy's like, in Matthew 6, this is how you pray, our Father who art in heaven. And it's like, hold up, that's weird. Mom's just saying this. You're reading that. But even weirder, I grew up in a Catholic school, read the Bible 6.5 times and didn't know the Lord's Prayer was out of scripture. So now that book is becoming more than a book. It's coming alive to me. It's teaching me something about what it is and what it ain't. And I say ain't because I'm in Kentucky. I gotta apologize for the way I sound. I can't hear it.
No, you're totally fine.
But, and it's funny because I live in a big city, but sound country is all get out. So it's the dialect of where I'm at. But sometimes I hear myself and I'm like, there you go, Bubba. So, Bubba. So you can't take the boy out the country, but I go somewhere else. And I remember a phone call sitting on the floor with my mother, who's again she's the only person I can talk to on the phone. It's expensive. I wrote a lot of letters. I had about 4 or 5 people that stuck with me, and it was the difference. If you know someone that's locked up, write them a letter. There is nothing that helps them stay clinging to hope more than getting mail. But being able to physically speak to somebody was powerful. And what happened is I was sitting on that floor one day and I was like, Mom, this is all my fault. I did every bit of this. And she told me immediately, Richard, you're going to have to forgive yourself. How can I forgive myself? I haven't spoke to my sons in 2 years. I may never actually get a chance to speak to them again. They might not want, maybe I'm kept from them until they're 18, and then grown men don't want to talk to me. I became my dad somehow. And that was like, I ruined my career as a psychologist. Like, how do you forgive yourself for causing all this pain and damage in my life, their lives? And she told me, you're going to have to take that to God. I don't want to hear this mess. I don't want to hear that, Mom. And I finally gave in to an invite, went to church, separate pastor, months apart. He's in Matthew 7 about taking the plank out of your eye and forgiving people. And I'm like, what is happening? And for me, that's when I realized, like, God's meeting me where I'm at.
Yeah.
I'm meeting my creator. And I've never lost sight of that, even though life doesn't get easier when you come to faith. It just gives you a way to deal with it and walk through it. Sometimes the tests get harder, in my opinion. And I didn't come to preach today, but that's vital. All the mechanics aren't. I came to faith in prison and was released 3 days later, unscheduled, on my 90th day.
Wow.
Drove all night, was able to be at a surgery for my grandfather, who was really my dad growing up. I was carrying that whole time of not being there for him, and no one were able to convince me that God's not real, because when I cried out, he answered me. And I know not everyone gets released, but I believe it will happen for them in his time. But my point in all that is it's a crucial part of my recovery, and how I've maintained recovery is through my faith. Sometimes it's AA, sometimes it's NA, sometimes it's therapy, sometimes it's your family, sometimes it's faith. So I came out, immediately had a lot of obligations that I had to adhere to and deal with probation. And for 5 years, I had to do these things. And I worked jobs that were miserable and beneath me, in my opinion, but that's what I had to do to provide a way to get back into court to see my kids. Then I met my wife, and her and I meeting plays into that testimony on a deeper level of inviting me to her church and what I experienced when I walked through that door. But we then started having kids, and those kids have had a father in their life the whole time. And eventually restoration with those older kids who were then, because it was almost, I had to go to a facility to see them, where someone monitored in the room, a social worker, and took notes. For 2 years, I had to do that. So for 4 years, you've got 2 years of not being able to see him, and then this structured visitation. And then finally we were able to, and what happened is, once I was able to be in their lives deeper, started to realize something was wrong. And their television became missing. Their PlayStation was missing. The gift cards that we bought them for Christmas were missing. It was like, what's happening in your house?
Yeah.
I won't get into all of that, but drugs were involved. Their stepfather was a monster. He's in prison now. I hope he never gets out. I just have to say it, because he tried to kill them. He tried to kill them and traumatize them. And my older sons are both mentally ill. And the oldest one is in recovery from a very difficult life, where he turned to drugs with his mother. And I prepared to bury him. I genuinely thought I was going to lose my son. And here I've been sober all these years, but now I'm dealing with this train wreck and finding out that someone's hurt my kids. And I put them in a position to be able to do that because I was removed from them. So while I didn't do it, as their father, I have to own some level of responsibility that my mistakes enabled this to be possible. And that's been a big part of my healing journey, is separating what's mine, what's not mine. And but added that third layer of this conversation of my son is now victimized by drugs and alcohol. They're both mentally ill. And I have guardianship of the oldest. He will never be able to truly take care of himself in full capacity because of his illness. But one of the ways that that's been very beautiful and possible is realizing, while I wasn't able to be that dad in those seasons, I'm the dad he needed now to pick up the pieces.
Right.
And I cannot underestimate both the significance and importance of that version of me. Oh my goodness. Maybe all along, God knew what was coming. And I had to do the work I was going to have to help him learn to do and pick up those, because I have to carry my own trauma and my own problems. And I'm also, that's not to negate my role in that or anything like that, but because there is choices. I did make these mistakes. I did do these things, and I had to be accountable for them. So I believe in jail, believe in prison. I also don't believe in sending people to prison for possession charges. I think that's a crazy way to treat a disease. I think that locking people up makes them worse. That's the facts. people have to do things to survive in that environment, even if it's just mentally, and it does something to you. It breaks you in some ways. I got called into ministry about 10 years ago, and I was then called back into the professional world of counseling about 5 or 6 years ago. Like, I did everything the right way for 10 years, and no one cared. No one treated me like a civilized human being. Employers thought they could just treat me however. Society is allowed to discriminate against convicted felons. It's legal to discriminate. Everyone else is a protected class. I don't want to get on the huge criminal justice conversation because we would be here for a long time, but you have no civil rights. I don't think people understand what that means or contemplate why it means what it means. Why can I not vote? I pay taxes. Why would you take away the ability to vote from a group of people? You're doing that to disenfranchise them. You're saying you're an outcast. You cannot participate in civilized stuff. But also, you've went to live somewhere that was ran by the government. So the government says you don't get to say anything about how we do things now. It is modern day slavery, in my opinion.
I would agree with you.
It is a revolving door because systems are broken the way that they want them to be broken.
Right.
Now, that is not me saying that the Department of Corrections is solely to blame for all these things, and they're doing the people that I work alongside of didn't create the problems we have. We're doing the best we can to manage them, and it's just, in my opinion, not enough. It's not working the way that it could work or should work, and it's really complicated why that is. And a lot of it boils down to the laws on the books. So we have to start there with change and advocacy and all that. But fast forward into that career getting restored and being able to come back into this environment, I said no for a long time. I did not want this mess, this headache. And it was triggering to smell the facility and be like, that smells like jail. I don't want to go to jail again. But when that was a reality and I was able to do that and come train young counselors and help be a part of passing on what I know to help the next generation, because I had that, I was like, oh, I'll do it. And what I've learned in this process after 3 years of being back in it is that we're not treating the underlying needs enough.
Right.
The underlying issues are why people go down this path. And that's not my approach. I went out and got EMDR trained and certified. I changed how we do things to a trauma-informed approach. I teach all these counselors, the body keeps the score. We use programs like Seeking Safety. Everything here is about trauma, even grief, because grief is traumatic. It's one of 3 categories. People are self-medicating because they've got some kind of underlying mental health issue. And that may be that they have a broken household that pushed them into social groups where using substances, anxiety and depression qualifies mental health. So it still fits that category. So even just wanting to fit in and have friends, have your people, drugs or alcohol open those doors. And then unfortunately, when you are either predestined for this through genetic predisposition, whether someone dies and it absolutely changes your life.
Yeah.
Because grief is a very powerful thing and it demands to be heard. So it's almost like grabbing hold of an electric fence. No, that hurts. I'm not doing that. I'm going to do anything I can to avoid it. Drugs and alcohol become a viable coping skill because that's all that they are, is a coping mechanism. It's maladaptive and causes harm, but it's just people trying to cope with their problems, or it's trauma. And people underestimate what trauma is and what it, not everyone got punched in the face. Not everyone was sexually abused. But if you were neglected, even if it was because your single mother had to go work, you are going to come away with some wounds. So the more we start to address those issues, because now the reality is I'm dealing with men anywhere from 18 to 70 something who have dysregulated central nervous systems, can't label their emotions for life of them. What are you aware of? I'm aware. And they tell you what they're thinking. A lot of men, what are you feeling right now? And they'll tell you what they're thinking because that's way safer. Or they don't know how to articulate their feelings. And unfortunately, a lot of them raise themselves. So they are really just doing the best that they can. And so around here, what will happen often is some of my counselors who are often younger in age, they're early in their careers, are like, why is he acting like that? Be a 60-year-old man, a 50-year-old man, jumping up and down, screaming and hollering over something that is not that serious. Why is, there you go. Why? Why would a grown man act like that? Let's work backwards. Let's, come on, Scooby-Doo, jump in the van. Let's figure this out. And I'll ask some questions like, how old is he acting? He's acting like a 14-year-old. Let's pull up his file. This man started abusing drugs and alcohol at 13, 14 years old. It almost always holds water. He's developing psychologically. So yes, what you're seeing is the behavior of a adolescent boy. His growth was stunted. But now that he's a grown man, no one cares. No one's cutting him any slack. You're not 8 anymore, sir. Grow up, figure it out. Well, we don't know what we don't know. So it takes people meeting you where you're at and really empowering you, giving you permission to feel whatever it is. I tell people around here, you have the right to feel however you're feeling. You have the right to think whatever you want. I can't control those things, but feelings are not facts. And your thoughts aren't always accurate either. But we start with giving them permission to have them.
Yeah.
Because everyone else has told them, stop, you're wrong. That's not right. Don't do this, don't do that. And we have to start there.
I'm struck by this ever-present, consistent movement forward with you. And this ability to be in it and still work in it. And despite the trauma and all these iterations of really tough things, you still kept putting a foot in front of the other and working to understand who you were in it and who you wanted to become. And so I just want to say, I want this to come across in the best way I know how, is to say, damn, man, I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I don't have an issue crying anymore. I cry a lot. It's healthy. There's biological mechanisms that happen when we cry that soothe us. And honestly, the older that I've gotten and studying internal family systems and parts work, like that, there's a little boy in me that needs to hear that once in a while. And sometimes I need to tell him that, because it's a catch-22, what you just said about keeping one foot in front of the other. That's what I learned to survive. It's a survival tactic. I've been running so fast my whole life. I've missed out on a lot. When I accomplish a goal, I don't celebrate it because I've already working on 3 or 4 more. That's a trap. That's a trauma response.
Totally agree.
So I have had to slow down, bub. That matters. That's a good thing. Hey, this is just a bad day. It's not every day. And just accept the best that I can what's going on presently. And sometimes that means like just let another person tell you they're proud of you. I couldn't do that 10 years ago. I wasn't capable of that maybe even 5 or 6 years ago. It made me uncomfortable. It still makes me uncomfortable, but I'm able to receive that because it's like, it's what you've longed for your whole life. Yet when it happens, you don't know how to, because you're kind of jacked up, buddy. That little boy that's figured out that created all these parts to survive, and these managers, so to speak, to use parts language, they were designed by a young kid. So they don't have it all figured out. Just learn to be fluid. However, it's not the worst skill in the world to have to keep going.
Yes. I mean, I think, there's a new book out by Jim Collins called What to Make of a Life. And what he highlights, which I think is so brilliant, is we all have cliffs in our lives. Just by being human, we're going to have cliffs. Some of us have just different cliffs, but we both have had consistent cliffs over and over and over again, and chosen to still put one foot forward, and then another foot forward, and then another foot forward, and to keep in the game. And it's never done. I'm not done. You're not done. We're still a work in progress. And maturity and evolution and wisdom and so on and so forth. But I do, because I coach and train on this, I do know that I get better every time I have a cliff.
That ministry I talked of a minute ago, there's a part of what we do, and we have language that says sometimes you just have to jump off a cliff with a group of strangers. People jumping out of planes, jumping off bridges. It's like sometimes you just have to take that leap to live and to take that risk. And the positive side of being a survivor and keeping going and all that is that it was also preparation to go back for other people. That's what happens. Survivors go back for other people.
I actually will kind of sort of disagree with you there.
Okay.
I think thrivers go back for other people.
Okay.
Because that's how I think about it. I don't think about me surviving all this. I think about me going through it, rising, healing, rising, healing, rising, healing, and continuing to go through it in the midst of still living a life that I love.
I like your language. I see the distinction you're making. And I do that often in my work where it's like, how about if we just shift this perspective just a little bit, change that word. It opens up the dynamic. So I don't disagree with you in any way, shape, or form. I can give an example of why I use the word survivors. It's like the pain that I've been through, the suffering I've been through has purpose and value in the world of helping people. And that's who I am, as a wounded healer. I am someone that has been called to heal out loud and to get real and honest and climb down in the pit and meet people where they're at. To go in, this is where my faith comes in, is that God calls people out of the dark and into the light and equips them to go back into the dark. And the reason is you're the only person that knows the map. You're the only person that knows you were built for that in some ways. And it's not to put all the responsibility in the world on all survivors to go help other people. Man, you know what? If that person that you help is yourself, that was a life worth living.
Right.
Even if that's the only person, because that, when I help one of these men, I didn't help him. Let me tell you what happens. This is what I teach my counselors, because I don't like to take credit for any of the work we're doing. It's a group effort, it's collective. But when we help one of them go home and stay home, we just change the family lineage in that family. We just impacted, we returned a father to his kids, a son to a mother, a spouse we just changed generations. That's worth doing. So to shift that language to, people that thrive, thrivers go back for other people. I think I adopted that language because there's a ministry in town called the Scarlet Hope, where women work with sex trafficking victims or women in the sex industry, stripping and things like that, pornography. A lot of these women are survivors of these issues. No one else wants to go back and help them.
Right.
And there may be some exceptions to that rule, but even in some of the counselors that I train, the men that we work with, this is pretty natural. They want to ask a question right out the gate. Are you in recovery? So I teach them. And this is what I was taught as a psychologist. Like, the real worth is in why they're asking the question, not the answer to the question.
Right.
They're sizing you up. They're trying to figure out where you are in the peaking ladder, so to speak. So if I say I'm in recovery, it's like, you can't tell me nothing. You're no better than me. They may genuinely be curious, but a lot of times they're sizing you up. Okay, well, I'm not in recovery. You don't know anything about this. You can't teach me. So it goes both ways. But what I teach the men is this. I don't know anyone that hasn't been affected by drugs and alcohol. You think that for what we pay and what we put up with, that any of these people are not coming in here because it's impacted their life, even if it was their community. They've been impacted by this, and they're coming in here because they want to provide compassionate care to people because this is their heart. They can go make more money doing something else. We don't have parades. There's no National Drug and Alcohol Counselor Day that I'm aware of where we get to take the day off. The government pays us. Like there's certain things that get celebrated. Sometimes being a helper is not one of them. But I do like that distinction that you're making, that like thrivers are the ones that go back. It's not so much that I feel obligated to do it. It's that my pain has purpose now.
Yes. And so there's a saying that our purpose sits right beside the worst day of our lives.
Yeah.
And I can attest to that.
Yeah.
And why I still do this podcast when Sam has been clean and sober for almost 3.5 years at this point.
That's awesome.
Why I will continue to do this podcast, because these kinds of stories need to be told.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, Richard, I could talk to you for another hour.
I know.
And I can't.
I get it. And I'm glad that you're able to manage that clock, because I'll keep going. I'm very passionate about this. So
I would, two things. One is, how can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out? And number two, would you be open to coming back to talk a little bit more about the journey of walking into jail as a person that went to jail? Because I think there's a window into that those of us who love people that have gone to jail need to hear.
Yeah.
And I think that would be super valuable.
I'd love to do that, because it will probably help people understand the reality of what incarcerated people live with and are dealing with to help you understand a better way to come alongside them and support them, because it's complicated. Love someone from afar, and you can't really understand that environment until you go there. I worked in it, and I very arrogantly misunderstood what it was.
Right.
I think it makes me a better clinician now, but I definitely love to do that.
Fantastic. So how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can find me by name on Facebook, Richard Lynch. You'll see one of these lovely hats on my head. I have one for every outfit. It's kind of my thing, but
that's great.
You can also find me on Instagram or TikTok under Lean on Your People. That's kind of my claim to fame. It is my encouragement, my brand, and my encouragement to people. Life is not an individual sport. It is a team sport. We are hurt in relationship and we heal in relationship. And you need to find you some people to lean on to get through whatever you're going through. For a lot of people, they have to build that support system. And that's scary to not know where to find those people. Some people have it, and that's beautiful. You can email me directly and I'm responsive. Richard.Lynch, LYNCH.JR@gmail.com. So Richard.Lynch.Jr@gmail.com. Do the best I can to respond to those kinds of things. But yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm out there and ready to talk if you need to.
Fantastic. And so we'll include all of that information in the show notes for anybody who's interested. Just in wrapping up, I just want to say how thankful I am that you are doing the work that you're doing. I was very fortunate that there was somebody similar to you when Sam was in jail. Thank God was right, because that was a massively surreal experience, which is why I want to have a further conversation with you. So bless you. Thank you. And everybody, this is worth the time. Listen. Words of wisdom. Okay, people, thrive.